Now, if you're new to this, you're going to wonder, what's he waiting for? Or, when are we going to start? And of course, the implication behind that question is that meditation is something that you do. And that's a fallacy of many meditators. Then meditation becomes just another doing. And you can put it in your schedule somewhere after all the appointments and whatever you have to do, then you do the meditation. But meditation is really about finding the dimension of depth in yourself, which is not a doing, it's discovering or sensing a deeper level within yourself, which we could call being. Now, you can't really do anything to find being, because being is prior to doing. And it's always already there as the essence of all life, including the essence of yourself. And now again, if you're new to this, you may wonder, what's he talking about? How do I find being? Being is all-pervasive, but because it's so all-pervasive, it's so easy to overlook. Just as easy as it is for a fish to overlook the eternal fact of water, because it's so all-pervasive. And so the fish says, water, I've never seen it. I've looked everywhere. So what does that mean, this analogy? There's something all-pervasive that is both within and without. And that is the essence of who you are. And that is where your sense of identity ultimately derives from. So as we sit here together, Can you become aware of the simple fact that you are? The fact of being, the fact that I am. Right now. To give you another pointer, can you become aware of your own presence here, without which there would be no sounds to listen to? There would be nothing to see. What is it that makes the listening and the seeing possible? That's the dimension of depth. That's ultimately where your sense of identity comes from. You can't define it, it just is. You just are. When you become aware of that, all that it really means is not so much that you become aware of something, but you become aware of the fact of awareness. Still, when I put it into language, it still seems as if you were aware of something, because that's how a sentence is constructed, subject and object. But that's not the reality of it. The reality of it is awareness becomes aware of itself. It's not two, but one. And awareness is consciousness. Consciousness that has become aware of itself. And that's so all-pervasive, that's always in the background of your life as a deeper sense of I am, or of beingness, or of presence. But you get distracted and seduced by all the things that happen and that you do, and continuously consciousness identifies and gets attached to all the things that occur, especially the thoughts in your mind. Consciousness becomes seduced into losing itself in every thought. And then you don't know who you are anymore. You get a false sense of identity. And you don't feel enough. And you feel there's something missing. And that you need more to grow in your sense of identity. And it never is enough. And here, in the dimension of depth, you are already enough. There's already a sense of completion, of fullness and aliveness. You don't need to become more alive. you're already alive. So another way of putting it is you become aware of the very aliveness that you are, the life that you are, which is one with the totality of life, the one life. As you look at me on the screen, and as you listen to the words, you become aware that there is a background to this experience that you are having at this moment, which is visual, mainly visual and auditory. There is a background of, could say, stillness to that experience. So the surface reality is your experience of looking, listening, then in your mind decoding the sounds and the visual signals. But then becoming aware that there is a background of stillness which is in between the words and behind the words. And that is a dimension that, if I perhaps had not pointed it out, some of you might not have become aware of. And you would only be interested in the words or in looking at me for some reason. But you can also be aware that there's a background to this experience that you're having right now, which is a little bit like the canvas on which the artist paints. The difference here is, of course, this metaphorical painting, which is the experience that you are having at this moment, is not fixed. A painting, once it's done, is fixed on the canvas. But this is a fluid, continuously moving painting, which is your present experience. And you can be aware simultaneously as you are having this experience right now, which from a conventional viewpoint could not possibly be called interesting. But there is something deeper to this reality than what is conventionally called interesting on the surface of things. If I start screaming now, that it becomes interesting, or something happens, the house collapses, oh, that's interesting. That's the surface reality. So meditation is deeper than interesting. You can now be aware simultaneously of the experience you're having at this moment. Words, visual image mainly, some thoughts, because the words I speak become thoughts in your mind. They become your thoughts. But these thoughts point elsewhere. They are pointers or signposts. They are not self-serving thoughts. They don't say, look at me, believe in me, adopt me as your opinion, identify with me. That's not what these thoughts are saying. The thoughts are simply pointers beyond thought. And what is it that the thoughts point to? The thoughts appear, they are part of the surface appearance on the canvas, the metaphorical canvas, that on which your present experience is painted, appears. But these words that appear on the canvas point to, speak of, the canvas on which they appear. They say, don't just be aware of me. The thoughts say that. Don't just be aware of me, be aware of where I appear and how I appear, how I emerge, where I emerge. Be aware of what makes it possible for me to be. Now, what makes it possible for a painting to be? The canvas. So, you become aware that there is a stillness, as I said, in the background of your present experience. In the background, and it even interpenetrates your actual experience. It becomes you find it in the cracks of between words. It's there everywhere. And what else could we call it? So I want to give you a few more pointers, helpful pointers. In addition to the experience you're having, and whatever makes up the experience you're having at this moment, and right now it's a very simple thing because there's only a few simple words and a man talking to you through the screen. But in addition to that, there is a silent presence that has no form. You can't say, there it is. You can't say, look at it. You can't grasp it. You can't analyze it. In fact, you can't know anything about it, and yet it's there. It's the one thing that is beyond doubt about the reality of this moment. Everything you're experiencing at this moment could be a dream, so you can doubt that. And in some ways it is a dream. it evaporates quickly, it dissolves, and then something new appears. So you can doubt that what you're experiencing right now is absolutely, really real. What you cannot doubt is that you are experiencing something, whether it's real or unreal, whether it's dream or reality. You cannot doubt that something is being experienced. You don't even have to say I am experiencing, because the I that says I am experiencing, me, the person, could be part of the dream, and in some way it is. But even if the person is a dream, and in some way, yes, the person is a kind of dream, but the dream is happening right now. What is it that enables the dream, if it is a dream, or if it's not a dream, what is it that enables the reality of this moment to be? And since I used the word to be, we could say it is the being that is behind everything. The silent presence, which is being. So you become aware of that. This again is the canvas, as we called it. But what is that? The mind may ask. And many answers are possible. Not one answer is the correct one. Every answer, what is to the question, what is that? Every answer will limit it, will not be absolutely correct, will distort it. And yet, let's say this, it is you. That canvas, that silent presence, is the essence of you. Not the surface you, the essence of you. Because the surface you, who knows what that is? It's a kind of dream. And you become aware of that underlying silent space or presence. There's a sentence in, I believe it's in the book, the little classic, by Saint-Exupéry, the Little Prince, see that book, and I believe it's in that book there's a lovely a sentence that says, what is essential is invisible to the eye. The eye, that's I. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Now, eye stands for all sensory perception. It's not just the visual. So what that points to is that the essential reality is hiding behind phenomenal reality. And you also, every one of you and myself, are, you can't really put a percentage on it, but let's just say you are 90% invisible. Who you are, actually, all what we can see is the outer form of you, and which is the physical body that the senses can see. But now we can even, one could cut open, hopefully not, your brain or whatever, and look for you there on a physical level, on a material level, with the most powerful electron microscopes, and they would not find you at all. And that's the strange thing, that you are not a material, physical entity. All the things that make up who you are actually invisible, and they remain invisible even if you cut open your brain or other parts of your body and examine what's there, including your millions of memories. Where do they live? Could you find a memory that you have of your first teacher walking into the classroom when you were 5 or 6 years old? There he or she is. Hadn't thought of her in a long time, but suddenly there she is. Where did she live all this time in your head? In what form? Did she live in the form of certain molecules that are the memory of your teacher? Where would you ever find this, or your room, if you had a room, or the living room of the house that you lived in when you were 8 years old? I could go there, and I can even touch things still and feel that's what that felt like, and there was that table and that curtain. Where do all these countless things live in you? And these are just mind forms, just memories, not to mention the deeper dimensions within you, but even those relatively superficial dimension of just memories are all totally invisible and can never become visible as material entities. So you are, and every human being is, almost entirely invisible. All you see is the surface shell of the body, and all your thoughts, science talk. We don't even know what a thought is and how it survives in you, but not really. So it's invisible, and you cannot find it in the sensory realm. And so the same, of course, applies to your dog. What is it that you love? We could talk about human too. It's surprising that there are many people who feel more deeply attached or connected to their dog than to another human being. And I'm not saying that that is bad or that should not be the case, but because I can see how and why that happens, because being is less obscured in the dog than it is in the human. In the human, the being dimension, depending on who it is, depending on the density of your mental, emotional conditioning, is obscured by that. Sometimes you can get beyond it, and you can deeply connect with the human and recognize what the consciousness that you share with the other, and when that happens, we call it love. But with a dog, it's easier to do. But it's important to realize that what you love in the dog is the invisible dog. Although the visible is pleasant, it's pleasant to the touch, when you look into the eyes of a dog, then you can sense the consciousness of the dog. So what you really love in the dog is the consciousness of the dog. Otherwise you could have a stuffed dog, or you could have one with have a little electronically controlled dog. Maybe one day they will have it and it goes but it's not the real thing. So with a dog, you look into the eyes, and next time with your next dog, realize that the essence of the dog is not what you see. You can sense it when you look into the eyes of the dog. You can sense the invisible essence of the dog, but only if you have some access to this invisible essence, the beingness in yourself. And as I mentioned yesterday, probably, it happens that even people who normally don't have access to that dimension within themselves, they feel drawn to the dog or the cat, because for very briefly, the dog or cat, by connecting with the dog or cat, very briefly it enables this person to have a glimpse of being within themselves. And this is why, I don't know if there's a little book that I produced together with Eckhart Tolle, and since I have a bad memory, the name escapes me at this moment. And the title of the book is Guardians of Being. And it's mainly about dogs, but I believe there are also some cats in it. And it's based on a few quotes of things I have said or written, I don't remember what, and wonderfully inspired drawings that go with the text. So, and I call dogs guardians of being for humans, because I have a theory that millions of more humans would go insane without their dogs. Their mind would just, they provide a kind of anchor into the realm of being. So the realization that the essence of the dog is invisible and also indestructible. And then you still love the dog, but the excessive attachment to the form of the dog might not be that strong anymore. You will still be sad when the dog passes away, but you won't be devastated. This applies now obviously also to humans. When you connect, we're deeply connected with another human being. One of the most difficult experiences in your life is to experience the passing away of a loved one, especially if it seems to come prematurely. Then it's even more difficult. And therefore, it is advisable that at all times you keep alive within yourself the realization that this human being is essentially a being, and the human is only a very small part, and this human being is essentially invisible, and what you love in him or her is invisible. Love is the recognition that you share the same essence. And this essence, we could call it consciousness. It doesn't matter what name we give it, but that's what you share. But you recognize yourself, the essence of yourself, in the other. Some people don't know that there is even the possibility of taking responsibility. That's why you are so important. Anybody who realizes it, you are the beginning of the transformed world.
The hardest word that I'm having trouble with right now is responsibility. And I have a hunch that most of the things that I consider responsibility are just my ego telling me things I have to do. But I also, when I think about the future of the earth and human evolution and stuff like that, sometimes I have big emotions of responsibility. So I'm just curious.
Thank you.
About the right relationship to the word responsibility.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's a strange word. It has been pointed out that if you look at the word, it seems to be talking about the ability to respond. So, to take responsibility for, what is it that you can take responsibility for primarily? It's taking responsibility for your state of consciousness, which determines what kind of world you create. Because you are humanity. Humanity is an abstract concept, doesn't exist. Humanity is the human being. You are humanity. So for humanity to take responsibility, you need to take primarily responsibility for your state of consciousness, because only a diseased or dysfunctional state of consciousness produces a diseased and dysfunctional world out there. By world, I mean the human-made world that has been imposed on what's already there, the planet, which is potentially, of course, a paradise. The planet, pristine, unbelievable jewel, a being of great intelligence. We are not separate from it, but the being is going through a transitional process. And every transitional process is critical. It may or may not work, in which case the being will go some other way. But your state of consciousness determines what kind of world you create, what kind of action you take, and what consequences your actions have. So here, this is why my main work is to address the cause of dysfunction, which lies in the human mind. The dysfunction of the human mind, or as it is sometimes called in Zen, the sickness of the human mind. So, as I see it, and I don't think anybody who reads history can doubt it, there is a deep-seated dysfunction in humans, has been there for thousands of years. And if there's no shift in that, then the dysfunction will destroy us. It probably won't destroy the planet, because the planet has enormous resources, but it will take a while. Would take a while for the planet to recover. All you have to do then is primarily take responsibility for your state of consciousness now. Now. And this is what the entire teaching really is about. What is my state of consciousness at this moment? Am I generating disturbance? Am I generating negativity? Am I generating conflict and suffering for myself and others? Am I generating inner pollution? Am I polluting the beautiful being that I am with continuous absurd movements of thought, producing negative emotions, producing an entire entity that is illusory, that I call the me. So, to take responsibility, there needs to be just, of course, an awakening where you can say, okay, I will take responsibility now. Some people don't know that there is even the possibility of taking responsibility. That's why you are so important. Anybody who realizes it, you are the beginning of the transformed world. I don't know who first coined the famous phrase. You hear it quite often these days. you need to be the change. That the change that you want to see out there, you need to embody that. And that's not primarily what you do. There's something more primary than what you do. It's who you are. Who you are is your state of consciousness. Whatever you do flows out of that. So that's the primary is that. So the change is the transformed state of consciousness. Now, that is your responsibility. Anybody, once you've seen that, that's your responsibility. Now you know it. People who are not yet at that level don't realize it, and that's fine. You can't expect the whole world already to be at that stage. It's enough for you to take responsibility, knowing there's still a few million others who don't know that they can take responsibility because they live in such unconsciousness that they see the entire evil in others. What they see as evil, it's all in them. And they make half the world into their enemy. It's all out there. They're still, that's fine. Your it's only those are required to take responsibility who are up to it. But even those who are totally unconscious still, on the one hand, they don't know what they're doing. Obviously, as Jesus said on the cross, they know not what they do. In other words, they are in the grip of unconscious forces, or unconscious mental emotional streams. They don't know what they do. They cannot be held responsible. And people say, well, they should be held responsible. No, they can't be. They don't know what they do. However, the fact that they are not responsible because they can't be responsible does not mean that they do not suffer the consequences of their unconsciousness. So they generate suffering. And eventually, suffering is the fire in which the ego gets burned up, the collective ego and the personal ego. That's the long way, the slow way, the painful way. And then there is a shortcut, which is any spiritual teaching it cuts through that. The painful way, the long way of waking up. More and more suffering. The planet might not endure such a long learning process for humanity. So if the learning process of humanity does not become shortened, it is doubtful that the planet can allow the humanity to learn through further suffering for another 500 years, or even 200 years, or even 100 years. So that's, you're responsible for all that.
Thank you. Hello. I want to ask, I work with people, and I notice, I work with people and talk about lifestyle change quite a lot and how it will relate to health. And I notice in myself, as well as in those people that I work with, that sometimes in the face of really clear experience that making a certain health choice will make them better, and in sometimes serious situations, like say they've got diabetes or something. And I just want to make this distinct from things that we know that are addictions, like smoking. So I'm not talking about that, because that's an addiction and that's got a different force. But sometimes people, for example, they'll go on a gluten-free diet, say, and they'll be much better for 3 months, and then they'll come back and they've started to lose that momentum, lose motivation, and they're drifting back into the diet that doesn't suit so well. What is that force? What is that in us, and me too, where I know that, for example, if I go to bed earlier, I'll feel better in the next day, but something in me sort of says, no, I don't want to go to bed early.
Yes.
What is that?
Yes. So these are forms of conditioning that is inertia and a certain momentum in certain ways in which people live that have been there for many, many years, they could also almost be seen as energy streams inside you, and they have a certain momentum, and some of these are sluggish energies, the inertia, the pull of gravity, gravitational force of deep-seated habits that are associated with the person. It's part of conditioning, mental, emotional conditioning. So then the motivation goes away again. And sometimes it's only in a crisis situation that people are able to break out of it, and sometimes not even then. If they really realize it's a crisis situation, then sometimes that can be the trigger that pushes people out of that the gravitational pull of deep-seated, conditioned habits. So there's also a reluctance, because these things are associated with the egoic sense of identity. There's also a reluctance sometimes to abandon these habits, because it's almost as if you were abandoning a part of yourself. And people don't want to die. The ego doesn't want to die. So often the ego is stuck in unhealthy habits, but it's become so much of their sense of self that they can't do anything about it, and they don't want to. So all you can do is explain what it is that they are doing, and what there's only that much that you can do for somebody else. You cannot force them to evolve. You can only provide the triggers for their evolution. So, and there are humans who don't want to evolve. They're not ready yet. It's like an apple that's on the tree, and it might be close to getting ripe, but it doesn't, or it might be, it doesn't want to fall. It wants to cling. Or let's say another example, the caterpillar says, "No, I don't want to become a butterfly. I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with who I am. Why do you want me to become a butterfly? I don't want to fly around in the air. I belong here." And then it munches, "This is where I belong." And no matter how much you talk to the caterpillar, you have to wait until finally the caterpillars, when it gets close to the transformation or metamorphosis, then the caterpillar experiences life becoming quite unpleasant. He cannot be a caterpillar anymore, and he can't even crawl anymore, and something is very wrong suddenly. And it's only when life becomes totally unbearable for the caterpillar, then finally he gives in and says, "Okay, I can't stand this anymore. I'd rather be a butterfly." And so humans are a bit like that. And some are ready, some need more suffering before they are ready. That's the unfortunate truth. And not necessarily physical suffering, it can also be self-generated mental and emotional suffering. Some people are not ready to give up their self-generated mental, emotional suffering. They're just not ready. They may come to you and say, "Help me, help me." But when it comes to the moment where they could be free, as happened to me years ago when I was still working with individual people, I was pointing out to a lady who came, who had a terrible irritation with her husband. For years, the very presence of her husband caused intense irritation. And everything her husband said and did, everything, the way he moved, the way he sat, the way he ate his food, he said, "I can't stand him." And so I explained, or attempted to explain, these in the early stages of, before any books were written, the early stages of the teachings, when I sometimes surprised myself when I gave answers, things I didn't know beforehand, they just came. So I explained to her the mechanism behind the suffering and the possibility of course, she could leave him, or she could discover that this is self-generated suffering, and she could be free of that. And then suddenly she began to see it, and she began to see the possibility of letting go of all that self-generated suffering. And then she suddenly said, if I let go of that, what have I got left? So she was so identified with their suffering, it was like not only a close friend, the suffering was an essential part of her, had become over the years an essential part of her sense of identity, of her sense of self. She did not want to let go, and soon after she didn't want to come and see me anymore. So, but I do know that some of the things I said to her later I put in the power of now. So she's in there somewhere, and hopefully she lived long enough so that she could read the book and perhaps saw herself in there, and then perhaps at that stage, perhaps she was ready. We don't know. We just have to accept some people are not yet ready, but do all you can, not to force them to change, but to provide that to them that triggers. It has to come from within them. The readiness to let go or to change has to come from within them. So how you do it will vary from person to person. Use your intuition. Go to the place of not knowing so that the intuitive, you can say helpful things that come from that deeper level that might make a difference to them. What that is, I cannot tell you, because you can only know that you in that situation with that person. So go to the place of not knowing when you are with people, not continuously, but be there sometimes. And then it's possible that that what they need, that can trigger an awakening, you might say to them or do to them. Well, do, what would you do? Like be the Zen master and hit them sometimes, but you don't want to do that. But life does that if they don't change. Thanks. This mind-made sense of self is also much more focused on the negative than the positive. To be free, you awaken to who you are beyond your history and your life situation. No drifting off into thinking. That's the Zen master speaking, without the stick. Awareness. If thoughts arise, don't get involved in them. Just let them drift past. Drift in and out of awareness. Be the sky, not the thoughts, not the clouds. You're the sky. Occasional cloud doesn't matter. You are the space. you may encounter boredom sometimes in meditation, because meditation is not interesting. So you encounter a little barrier inside this, and then you surrender to that, and you go beyond boredom. Impulses may come. You want to get up, start thinking about something. And you observe that. And then it arises and passes away. Many things in meditation you can practice. The arising of feeling or a thought or some impulse. You can watch it. And if you don't have a reactive relationship towards it, you don't give it excessive importance, it subsides again. And then you're left with just you as spacious awareness. And then the next thing comes. And you're still there as spacious awareness, even though the thought has come in. And then it subsides. And then the body gets restless. And then the mind says, I need to get up, I can't carry on sitting here. And then you watch that. You watch the restlessness. Everything is allowed in the present moment. Any external disturbance immediately becomes part of your meditation. There's never anything outside, unless you're physically attacked by a mountain lion. There's never anything outside that can actually disturb your meditation, even a big what they call in England pneumatic drill. I can't remember what it's called here. But same thing. It starts up next door. Imagine. And you say, I can't meditate in conditions like this. But the surprising thing is, you don't need ideal conditions for meditation. In other words, every condition is ideal for meditation. If you totally accept the so-called disturbance, you surrender, it becomes part of the meditation. You have transcended. If you want to overcome the pneumatic drill, you have to run out there and say, stop that. Then you have either overcome it or you are in an argument. Transcendence is meditation. Whatever arises. And that then becomes the way in which you live your life. That you never oppose anything. Anything that comes in, you go, oh. And then you go with it, around it. You don't oppose it, it's accepted. The present moment is accepted. So, and you can practice that during your meditation.
First of all, I want to thank you and Eckhart for everything that you've given me and are giving me now. It's so greatly appreciated. I'm not sure if it's a question, but I need a response from you to clarify. It deals with the pain body and challenges, overcoming challenges, transcending challenges. And then I think I heard you say this morning, I heard Eckhart say yesterday, the good news is we don't have to suffer. So, 5 years ago, coming up to 5 years, my son died. And I went through, he died suddenly. So it was, and he also was my best friend. So it was I can't even think about the suffering that I went through at that time. You know, it's just like, it was, I wailed, I cried, and for months, I just went there, in that suffering, that pain, and that broken heart that was torn apart. And I remember, to the point I was crawling on the ground I have a place down by the sea, and I was there, and he loved that place, and we spent many wonderful times there together. And I was crawling on the ground and crying, and I heard him say to me, "Dad, stop that." And that came to me, a shift happened. It was a change there. Of course, I've transcended it, and I've overcome it, not completely. I never will overcome that completely, I don't think. But what I want clarification from you on is, I don't really believe, I don't fully understand that one can transcend, overcome, or have a choice in certain situations concerning that type of suffering. So there's where I'm wondering, when you say we don't have to suffer, we do have a choice. I'm saying it's not been my experience in that case.
You know, as I said earlier, and what Eckhart says is suffering is our greatest teacher. So the suffering is teaching you. And you already know that in order to go beyond that suffering, that's the evolution of human consciousness through you. So consciousness is awakening through you. So not to say that, I almost see you and sense that in order to hold on to the memory of your son, that the fear of letting go of the suffering will somehow get you be less connected to your son. Yeah. And that's not the case, and that's what your son was saying to you. You don't have to. You don't have to suffer. Because you will be actually more connected to your son without the suffering being there.
Yeah, in a way, he tells me that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's telling you that.
Yeah.
And he's saying to you, Dad, you don't have to suffer. I'm right here.
Well, could you say that again, please?
You know what?
Tell me that I'm going to be more connected with my son by not suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the suffering is just getting in the way for that real connection not of the form. The form is gone. Every form will pass away, but what is left behind is the essence. And that true essence lives in you. Your son and you are no different. It's the same essence. So you're going to be more connected to yourself, which is also your son. And that's the gift through his death that he's leaving you. Is that space, that empty space, that void that he's leaving behind for you to go deeper into yourself.
Well, it explains, when I go to his grave these days, I don't feel that suffering, I feel peace. So that's a wonderful gift. I know he gives me those gifts, and he's more present in a very positive way, in almost a jovial way. Because I'm trying to communicate with him. Sometimes he just laughs at my way of making efforts to communicate with him, more or less saying, I'm right beside you, kind of thing,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It's right here. It's all right here.
Thank you very much.
I have to share this story, this last story, because when Maya, our dog, passed away last September, and a few months before that, my father passed away. And actually, Maya was kind of in that very critical mode, even when my father was passing, and it was like, who's going to go first? That sort of thing. And it was obvious my father was going first, and I said to my father, you know, Maya's going to come right after you soon after. Will you greet her? And when Maya, she died at home in my arms, and when she was passing away in my arms, I felt my father's presence come. And then I felt them both there, joyful. It was just like they were so happy. And it was just like, wow, this is incredible. And it brought such peace and such joy. There was just absolutely no fear, nothing. I just felt this incredible sense of joy. And I knew that joy was emanating from the essence of who they were. And it was just absolutely so beautiful, you know, and they're still there. I could still feel them. When they passed, and when because my father passed first, I was able to touch into that empty voice, that void of just, I remember being in, getting ready to change and in my closet and just like, wow, I miss him, and that emptiness. And then I went into that emptiness, and suddenly there was this tremendous peace there. And it was just like, wow, that emptiness is God itself. And we are God itself through the form. And eventually all forms, as they always do, leave. And it leaves you with emptiness, which is really your God nature, which is God. You're left with God. And he's saying, you're left with God. Don't hold on to the suffering anymore, because the suffering and the attachment to the form is keeping you stuck. It's keeping you further away from God. And God is all around us, right here, right now, through every living being, nature, and yet beyond all of that, beyond the form. It's just here, and the forms pop up. But yet, stillness is here. God is here. That little space that Eckhart talked about all of a sudden became big. That's how it works. You take that little space and you go right into that space, and soon enough that space just... There is more space in this universe than there are stars in the sky. How beautiful it is that we get to witness the stars and have the experience of our children, of our parents, even though they can bring us to unconsciousness sometimes. But saying all that, when they're on their deathbed, do you think about that? Well, sometimes you do if you're in the grip still of the pain body, but as we begin to awaken, we tap into something else that we begin to see right through their own pain. Because that pain that they feel is no different than our own. And we know if we can transcend the pain within ourselves, so too, when we look then at the other in their pain, we don't see them only as pain, only as their pain body, in other words. We see the essence of who they are. And the pain body is just a temporary thing. We'll get these gifts, and as we become older and older, the things and the people around us pass on, and we're left with this emptiness. And in that emptiness, you can say is also fullness, because you are one with God. You've merged with the essence of who you are, and you don't feel that emptiness. You become filled with peace, with love, with joy. Thank you.
We've had human history for the past thousands of years has been dreadful suffering. We're going to transcend. This is a transcendence of human, but this is just a question of words. It doesn't matter. What matters is that there is the birth of something entirely new on the planet. And if you wanted to explain it in words, it is the disidentification of consciousness from form. That's the end of ego, because the identification of consciousness with form is ego. It is the dream of consciousness. So when a human awakens, it's not really a human awakening, it's consciousness awakening from the dream of form. So it is not only a shift then that happens to a human being, because ultimately there's no such thing as a human being. You just look like a human being or person. You are consciousness. So it is something much vaster that's awakening. When you think you are awakening, that's what it looks like. But there's something much vaster that is awakening, of which you are a part. And that is consciousness itself. So it is a cosmic event. And since it is happening on this planet here, it is reasonable to assume, and we can be virtually certain, that because everything is a microcosm, it's happening elsewhere in the universe. So it is an awakening of the universe into a different level, a completely different level of being, of consciousness. So that's how important your life is. And that's how something that may look mundane on the surface, you go every day, you go to the office, or you go to whatever you do in your job, and every day you go and you do what you do, and you talk to people, and you deal with things every day. It looks mundane on the surface. But if you realize what really matters is the consciousness you bring to it, then what looks mundane on the surface is not mundane at all in the depths of being, because all that surface stuff is really something, an opportunity for the arising of the new consciousness through you. And so that means also that the surface of your life, which means whatever you do, where you live, or who you live with, doesn't really matter that much. What matters is what you bring in, what flows into it, the consciousness that flows through you into it. That's what matters. So you don't have to be even that concerned about what exactly it is you do. And almost anywhere, you can be the opening for that. And if consciousness, this consciousness arises through you, and you find yourself in a situation that is totally unconducive to consciousness arising, you will very quickly find yourself taken out of that situation. Or you may find yourself walking out of that situation. In other words, they'll fire you, or you'll walk out. But the important thing is not to believe, okay, to bring consciousness, I can't do it in my situation, I can't do it. Something needs to shift first out there before I can. No, that's not true. You start with where you are, here and now. And if it's not right for the arising of consciousness, then something will shift in the situation. It will change through because there's now a consciousness flowing into it, or you become removed. Life removes you. So, upset, again, let's go back to that term. Vigilant, it always tells you you've missed something there. You've forgotten something. And this is why the Course in Miracles has the wonderful line, I'm never upset for the reason I think. So there are many reasons why you think you're upset. He said that to me. He shouldn't have said that. He did that. He failed to do that. She did. Why can't they, these people, they never get it right. Why? I'm upset. What am I going to live on next month? What am I going to live on when I retire? My savings are shrinking. It's awful. Whatever upsets you. I'm never upset for the reason I think. And that's just something to understand deeply. There's always a reason out there why you think you're upset, but the true reason why you're upset is you're not present. You're not connected to the depths of your being. You're not there as consciousness. You're there as a little person. You're not rooted in consciousness by embodying the consciousness. You're a little person with its thoughts and reactions, and that's why you're upset. As long as you're trapped in the little personal sense of self, of course you're always upset. Soon, even if you're not permanently upset, very soon something will happen again that will make you upset. That's why life is so frustrating in the normal state of consciousness, and that's what the Buddha called dukkha, suffering. So he used that term. Upset is a modern term. Wherever you go, you'll be miserable, said the Buddha. Just wait. It won't be long before you're miserable again. I'm paraphrasing. It's my translation of the ancient sutra. Wherever you go, you'll be unhappy. And if you're not unhappy, no, just wait a little and you'll see. And he's describing a normal state of consciousness. But he's also showing the way beyond that. But it's wonderful to first of all see the truth of the first statement, that wherever you think salvation lies in externals, in some other person that you meet, some other situation that you go into, some other place where you go to live, it'll be fine for a while, and then something comes in that doesn't seem quite right. Or the very thing that made you happy turns around, and the very same thing makes you unhappy. Of course, as you know, the best example of this is marrying somebody. Because when you marry somebody, at first, this person makes you happy. And then the Buddha said, just wait. Unless you transcend the merely personal, then it's not that your spouse will make you happy, no, but there is a deeper, if you want to even call it happiness, there's a deeper sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that arises from the depths of your being. And that's why then it's fine. It does mean, yes, your spouse still has his or her shortcomings, but they then exist within the larger space of consciousness. So, again, keyword, vigilance, and then experience the miracle of the transformation of consciousness, which is your sense of self is no longer derived then from the personal level, your history, your life situation, your relationships, your knowledge, your ideas, the things that people have done to you, your status in society, your possessions, which those things normally give you your sense of identity, and that changes completely. When you wake up in the morning, give yourself 5 minutes of pure presence. Be present in your entire energy field, every cell of the body, and you lie on your back and you sense just not. You can be a person once you get up out of bed, you start becoming a person. But while you're still there, be the presence. So there's nothing to think about, there's only sensing, presence pervading your entire energy field, being it. Beautiful way to start the day. Resist the temptation of reaching for your phone. I just want to know what the weather is like. Well, you look out of the window. I need to know what he tweeted today. Who is he? And when you go to bed, also important, the last 5-10 minutes, whatever, before, go to sleep from presence rather than from thought. avoid digital devices in bed and be present. That changes the nature of your sleep too. I often say, if you drive to work, it's important to interrupt the doing with occasional realizations of being. So you get into your car, you close the door, and you sit there for 30 to 60 seconds, just being, but not internally waiting for 30 or 60 seconds to be over already, but to really just be there. So you interrupt this flow that drags you along in the doing dimension and bring in being. So, and then during the day, many times you bring in moments of beingness when you connect with the deeper I, and you can use external things to help you, looking at a potted plant in your office or wherever you are, or looking at a tree outside the window, or looking at the sky, looking through the window. And you can use any window as a meditation, whatever window it may be and whatever may be on the other side of the window. I call it the window meditation. Look at the window and give attention to what's outside the window, whatever it is that you can see, but while you see it, feel yourself, the being of you. And then there's not a person perceiving it, there is a presence. You have transitioned from being a person to being the presence. There's a little episode that Oprah did some years ago where they gave people an empty frame. They stopped people in the street and they gave them an empty picture frame. And they had to take this picture frame and direct it anywhere, and wherever you direct it to, just give attention to what it is that you're looking at in this frame. So you go around with the picture and you stop somewhere, and there's the floor, and you hold it for a few seconds, and you give it becomes a painting. So wherever you direct it, it becomes a painting, which means you give your fullest attention and you discover beauty everywhere. And an amazing thing. And so that gave me the idea of the window meditation, when you look wherever the window may be, you give it attention. I even have a succession of photos that I took on my iPhone of different windows in different places in the world, hotel windows mostly, and so looking different. Just maybe one day I'll project it on a screen somewhere, the window views, the window meditation. So and of course you can also, if you get a chance, completely do away with sensory perception and close your eyes, and that's meditation as such. Close your eyes and sense the beingness of you. Sense the presence. Be that. And you're not doing a meditation. You're not doing anything. You are realizing being. You're realizing I am. The I am. And that is when you access it directly. So no more sense perceptions, except what happens accidentally, but you don't necessarily focus on anything. You just focus on the power of presence. The power of presence in you, which is essentially you. And it usually incorporates your entire body. It's not really the physical body, but something deeper that underlies the physical body. And that which underlies the physical body, you may want to close your eyes for a moment, that which underlies the physical body actually doesn't have any shape or form anymore. It doesn't really have any extension in space anymore. There's just presence. And that's an incredible realization. Then you go deep enough into the body, it ceases to be the body, and you may lose a visual image of yourself as body, and all that's left of you is an extensionless point of presence. It's wonderful. An extensionless, there's no space or time in it anymore. It's the transcendent you, transcendent I. There's only one I. So you have no shape anymore, no shape or form. And you're not subject to time. And that's the power of presence. That is the power of the one power, the one that underlies the cosmos. If thoughts come in, don't give them any attention, then they drift away again, it's fine. If you drift out of it, taking a deep breath, a kind of belly breath, 2 or 3 times, on your belly, your abdomen more expands as you breathe in, contracts as you breathe out, and then puts you back in touch with the inner body. And then again, the image of body may, if you go deep enough, may disappear. And all that's left is that awareness, that point of awareness, extensionless awareness.